Hi, my name is Jenna. In the last video, Akia dug deeper into the problem we are trying to bring awareness to with this short video series by addressing society. Brian, can you leave the room?
By addressing society, lack of knowledge of the LGBTQIA+ community and how this lack of knowledge affects our youth now and in the future. In today's video, we are sitting down with Lindsay, myself, Jonah, this crackhead over here, Jenna, who can't stop laughing, and Brian, who is over there, to watch and discuss some videos related to the LGBTQIA+ community and how we can overcome some of the issues brought up in the video.
Okay, press play on the video. Where's the TV remote? Press play.
I'll just redo this when they leave. I can't handle this.
You started. Now, did you guys see that one? I was looking at the TV. I was like,
okay.
Watch the video later.
Okay, we're gonna watch it. I'm sorry. We're watching this video. Let me get a hold of myself. He's still recording. It's sad.
Make sure you turn it up, though.
I don't have that remote. This is stressful. Good job, Jonah. I heard you laughing.
It's light, it's different, it's fun.
Oh, but aren't you just really straight? Like, aren't you just, saying this to just like fit in and be more interesting?
Some stereotypes about the LGBTQ community that I wish would die would be the overall perception that the LGBTQ community is only made up of
skinny, rich, white, blonde, gay men who love shopping at Rodeo Drive.
And while the LGBTQ community certainly is made up of a lot of cis gay men,
I don't fit into that mold. And I think that the problem with any kind of stereotype is that it condenses the complex and diverse narratives.
it's vibrant and broad and beautiful and deserves to be represented with more trans people, more non-binary people, lesbians, bisexual people, and certainly people of color who fall into all of those categories.
When we kind of cast a stereotype into the queer community, the violence that happens to queer people of color is lost, and there's just so much of a diverse and complex narrative that's lost in the process of stereotyping queer individuals.
One of the things that I find that is a really big misconception in terms of what the LGBT community is and what it's like is the difference between presentation and identity.
It is frustrating when people constantly think that bisexuality is just a nice word for I'm, experimenting in college. It's even worse than I'm in college.
I wish that the stereotype that we're all fabulous, like, yes, queens, I'm not bad, I'm very mellow, and I think that to expect us to be, fabulous best friends is kind of asking for too much.
I actually have a joke with me and my friends that my superpower is invisibility because I am constantly being told that I don't exist.
Presentation is a way to help express your identity. It's a way to help alleviate dysphoria if you're trans or if you experience dysphoria in any other way, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything about who you are or what your identity is. And so I think we really need to be having more in-depth conversations about what a person's identity is and what it's okay to ask versus what you can tell about someone's physical presence and what you shouldn't assume based on that.
What are everybody's thoughts on this video? We have
Or anything else in general that you think is important.
Well, something, I don't know, this might not be something that came up in the video, but something that I was wondering is why the trans community and the gay, bisexual, lesbian community got lumped into one community called the LGBTQ community. Because I don't really understand, it doesn't, I don't feel like people, I don't feel like I go through any of the same things that a trans person go through. I don't really feel like I can really relate to trans people. I don't really feel like, there's really many similarities, so I don't really understand why we're all lumped into this one big group. It kind of bothers me sometimes.
Well,
Does anyone else have any opinions on that?
well, why do you think they're grouped together as opposed, and why does that bug you? Besides the fact that you feel that you cannot really relate to that.
I feel
that
like
group.
I feel like it bugs me because it's kind of making it seem like there's not a difference between the issues that a gay person might go through and the issues that a trans person might go through. Because I feel like that their issues are a lot different than my issues, and I feel like although we may have been both oppressed groups, like it's kind of like relating like gay people to other groups that have been oppressed, like different religious groups or racial groups. So I don't really see like, I just don't see how they're connected, is guess what I'm saying.
What I don't understand, not understand, but it's like a lot of trans people get offended when you like ask the wrong type of question. But at the same time, like most people that are not within that community like don't know the right questions that are like acceptable to ask. So I think there definitely needs to be like more education on that throughout like the whole world, basically.
Mm-hmm. But who do you think that falls on? Do you believe that falls on the LGBT community itself to educate the people who are not part of that community, or do you feel that it's a part the people that are not a part of that community to, or do you think it's both, that both need to come together and work towards
I think
it?
both definitely need to come together for that. It's like, because they're already voicing their opinions right now, and they'll let you know. Like they protest and they like lobby just to show like public interest, if that makes any sense. But you don't see people that don't know how to ask them the right questions. You don't see them protesting for the same rights.
I think those problems are kind of related too. It's like it's hard to educate if you lump them all into one group, because there are different expectations for different communities, and since they are different, it's like how can you keep them all straight when you like learn and talk about them as if they're all one.
I had a really interesting conversation with my grandma at Thanksgiving about like pronouns. She like understands the whole like non-binary thing and understands that people may not feel like they're a man or a woman, but she doesn't understand why there's such a big fuss over, not fuss, but why there was such a big dilemma over pronouns, and she just didn't understand, and she like couldn't grasp her head over the like they them pronouns. And I was trying to explain it to her and how it's important to like recognize those pronouns, but I just couldn't get like through to her. I couldn't like explain to her like she just didn't understand the value of it. I guess that was the thing. She was like, basically her point was like it doesn't matter, like pronouns for men, pronouns for women, pronouns for no one matters. It's not about that. Like I understand who you are, I understand where you're coming from, but to get angry over these things didn't feel like it mattered to her. Which I didn't totally agree with, because I can definitely see how it matters. But I don't know.
Well, yeah, like this is like kind of not at all the same, but a little bit. Like my dad I have a cat. It's a dude, but my dad will only call it a she because he's like, well, it's a cat, and like feline, so female. And like I know he doesn't mean it to like he's literally just
your dad calls your cat a she?
Yeah. And it's like he knows it's a he, but like he refuses to like call it a he because I don't know. It's weird, and he keeps forgetting, and it like bothers me. And it's like I can see why if like it's yourself. Like that's my cat, so like I can't even imagine if that's like how you feel yourself and people just keep calling you the wrong thing. It's like I understand like your grandma. It's hard to like understand that because you don't experience that, right? Because she hasn't had it been put into that place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I definitely think that was like a great like comparison, because I know I'd be quick to like defend like my dogs, like oh she's so cute, it's a he. Like I say that really fast, but
and like you might not mean anything by it, but you're like no, it's a he. Like,
yeah, but it's like in the trans community when they do that, they kind of get like labeled as like
like you're
like a negative connotation to
like
it. Yeah, but it's
right?
just you're just correcting them. You're teaching, like trying to teach them what you would prefer to be called.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just back to you about how your grandma said like she didn't really understand it. I think that it's mostly because in like older generations they didn't like have as much knowledge about the community, and nowadays I feel like we're more aware of it. So like we know transgender, we know like all the different kinds of genders people may identify as, but like I don't think it was around when your grandma was around or like being raised. So I feel like that's part of why she might have a harder time grasping it, because she wasn't like exposed to it.
Yeah.
So,
Makes sense.
all right, next video.
My name is not as important as my story. I am a 22-year-old homosexual man from Tajikistan, a country that is held for the LGBT community. I was raised in a very conservative and religious Muslim family, and it was a really big shock for them to find out that I'm gay. My father and brother beat me as if I were an animal, and at one point I was thrown out of my home. For many nights I slept in the streets of Dushanbe. Strangely, the laws in my country do not prohibit homosexuality, but only on paper. In reality, it is the opposite. Police have beaten and tortured me just because I'm gay. I had to bribe them to avoid prison. I was under huge mental and physical pressure. When I could not handle it anymore, I fled my country. Now I'm in Germany, one of the safest places in the world for the LGBT community. But I still miss my family. I miss my mother most, who loved me so much. But unfortunately, she could not accept me as a gay person. My message to Tajikistan is, we all LGBT people want to live our normal and happy life and contribute to society. Why does our life have to be so difficult?
All right, thoughts on that one?
It's just kind of sad that he can't live in his home country the way he is without, he just can't live there really. It's not a safe place for him. That's sad.
Do you think that because he's in a different culture than us, do you think that he might face like more problems than people here in the US do, or do you feel like it's the same?
Oh, he definitely faces more problems than we do. I mean, even though it's not perfect here, like, I've never been physically hurt by anyone for who I am. Not from like, especially not from like the law enforcement.
Right.
We're supposed to be people that are protecting us. So yeah, I definitely think it's much harder for him in this country.
I pretty much just agree. Like, that's just really sad that you can't, not only to be like rejected by your family, but like that's what a lot of the issues here are. I feel like it's a lot of just not feeling accepted in your own community that you thought you once belonged in. But like he was not even accepted like in his whole country, in his home. It's like there's not much of an option for people like that, I feel like, and they can get stuck in those situations. So he was lucky that he did leave, I feel like, but it's just sad.
Any other thoughts about anything? Not specifically on it doesn't have to be on the video while Jenna is pulling up the next video or anything. No? I'm just gonna go around the room then.
Do some dance?
As the long one.
How many videos are there?
There's this one and one more.
Oh, okay.
They're all short anyway. They're like 2 minutes each. We tried to find. There's one that I really wanted to show, but it's not on YouTube, so we can't watch it. It was really good. It's the one that I picked. The last two, not this one. The last one I picked And then the other one I wanted to show I picked. These first three our other group member picked. That was his job. So you can tell him how good he did on the video selection or if he did bad or not. I mean, I think they're all right videos.
Got it.
Title IX is technically a one-sentence law, so it basically means that no one should be discriminated against based on their gender. That it would be 1996. I had over 416 cases in under 23 months. It was like opening the Pandora's box of what had been going on, and it's hard to swallow such an underculture or underbelly of a culture that exists, that people, that like no one's having sex, no one's drinking until they're married.
Patty agrees with DeVos that adjudicating criminal cases in a college setting can be difficult.
What's happening is universities are becoming these quasi-criminal and civil processes, and it does get murky and it does get complicated.
Instead of working with schools on behalf of students, the prior administration weaponized the Office for Civil Rights to work against schools and against students. But Title IX officers have far less power than what DeVos suggests.
Title IX professionals have a hard time doing the work because there's complexities in every case, and Title IX professionals don't have subpoena power. We also are restricted by jurisdiction. The most strict discipline we can give is to expel someone or separate them from the university. But that doesn't go to criminal record. It doesn't restrict them from hanging out at the bar across the street. There's no interim protections under a criminal process. And a trial can take 3 years. How long are we usually in school? What happens every day when they're trying to go to class and they see the person on campus, or they're in class with the person?
Over the last 5 years, the number of Title IX complaints to the Department of Education involving sexual violence increased more than 500%, from just 41 complaints to 260 last year.
I think people report more now because it's being talked about. You allow room for students to come forward and say, hey, I think something bad happened to me.
All right. Thoughts? Questions? Concerns? Did you guys know about Title IX? Do you know what it was before this video? Did you learn anything new?
Well, I think the video was saying was that like basically like universities have this kind of weird power where they can deal with some of these issues, but it's not under necessarily like under the law, it's under like the school's law. But that makes it complicated because they aren't really like
Being
responsible with it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a really complicated topic because I don't really understand. I guess the question is like I don't understand why schools have this like when somebody is sexually assaulted at MSU, they'll probably report it to like, well, maybe MSU police or like the university, but like why is that what they're reporting it to? Why don't they like go to like the local law enforcement?
That's a good point. Because like if you were assaulted in not the university setting, that's not
not how it would
handle
work.
You wouldn't handle it that way.
The police, I think.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah. I don't know, because like a lot of the stories you do hear are like usually with students. Like when it makes it on the news, you usually just hear like some college female student was sexually assaulted, or like to be really general, but like you don't really hear about it occurring outside of the university like a lot of the times either. I don't watch so much news, so maybe there is, but I feel like when it does come up, it's usually like really drastic, like she was assaulted and murdered. Like if it's not in a university setting, you know what I mean? It's not just like some woman was attacked on the streets.
She's.
No? Alright, we're gonna go to the last video.
The Paul Night Club was not Orlando's most crowded venue that deadly Saturday night, but it was full. Popular go-to spot for the city's LGBT population. Let me explain why it was struck. Officials across the country, including this one in Washington, many expressed solidarity and outrage. There has to be anger on some level. Some are not willing to acknowledge that there's been violence and committed against a very consistent part of the American population. It seems amazing to me in this day and age that something like this could happen. Violence against the LGBT community didn't start in Orlando and likely won't end there. Nearly 50 years ago, police in New York raided the Stonewall Bar, beating the gay men who had gathered inside, and helping ignite the gay rights movement in the U.S. A few years later in New Orleans, an arsonist set fire to a gay bar, killing 32 people inside. Some local churches refused to bury the victims. Attacks on various scales continued for years. And just 2 years ago, on New Year's Eve, an arsonist in Seattle set fire to the steps of a club hosting more than 700 people, many of them local LGBT leaders. The fire was quickly put out, and no one was injured. There have also been countless attacks on individuals. Harvey Milk was San Francisco's first openly gay city councilman. In 1978,
because many in the closet LGBT people fear reporting attacks, or because police often fail to pass along that information to federal authorities.
Conversely, as LGBT Americans become more accepted in progressive states, some say they're also becoming more visible targets.
We can't really live here in fear at this point, you know, and everyone did the right thing by showing up, and that's the only way that we can prove that we're going to win this, is to show up and be here and support and be who we truly are.
Roby Ruttenberg, CCTV in Washington.
If you like what you just saw, follow us.
All right. What is everyone's opinion on that?
I mean, just like any other minority group, there's gonna be people that don't like you, and there's gonna be people that want to make that just are gonna do bad things to you, which is unfortunate. And I think it stems from like lack of knowledge and education and a history of prejudices.
And I agree with that it's the knowledge and of all the communities, and I feel that falls back on the government, and so on the government now to push for things like in schools with our youth to educate them on the LGBTQ community and whatnot. Do you think there's anything that the government can do now besides pushing for more of that kind of and sexual education stuff that help with that in schools? Is there anything else that you guys think that they could do specifically?
I mean, aren't there still states where gay marriage isn't they overturned?
No.
I don't know.
It's legal in all. You can get married in any state.
It's yeah. The one thing is, I think it's about the wedding cakes. Like if the person who's making, if they go to somebody who makes wedding cakes, if that person, or finding a place to get married, those people, it's up to them, because if their religion or whatnot says, oh, you can't be gay, then it can. So.
It's kind of complicated because it is there are parts of the people's religions and the Bible and stuff that specifically talks about it. So it really is interesting because we want to protect people's right to be religious, but it's it's hard to know where that line falls.
A lot of the time, what I think is you can believe what you want, but once it starts impeding other people's rights, that's when you draw the line. So you can have those religious thoughts, but you can't push those religious thoughts on other people. So even if you disagree with their decision, not their decision, but their identity or just anything about them, then that's your problem, and it's can be upsetting to you, and but them just living their life isn't going to impede your life just because your religion says that's wrong. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can believe that somebody may be a sinner or something, but just because that you think that doesn't mean you need to take action for it. That's up to them because that's their individual right.
Yeah. It's probably, I don't know, is it in the Bible that you can't have sex before marriage?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like these people are denying like everyone who's had premarital sex.
Right.
It's like, I don't know, it's just weird. It's like we can pick and choose what we want to believe. We can pick and choose what we're going to deny people for. That's like in the end of the day.
Yeah, there's like some really like odd things that are in the Bible, like just like you can't like
wear a shirt with like 2 or more fabrics.
Or it's just like
or
weird
like
things.
divorce.
Or like there's parts where like you can't cut your wife's hair or something like that. I think was one thing. I don't even know, but silly things that like people don't even scrutinize over. They're just like, well, you know, whatever. But like they'll pick one thing out and they're like, no, like this is something we have to be firmly like accounted for, and they make it everybody's deal, not just their own. Like, yeah.
I'm gonna add something slightly off topic. You and I were talking earlier about how some African Americans believe that their problems and their discrimination that they face are more important, or maybe not more important, but tend to be prioritized over like transgender rights. Do you ever talk about that?
Yeah, kind of what we were talking about was like, I don't know, some people, I was talking to someone who feels as though, basically that people, like, there are issues and there are things that we need to work on within our society, but there are some things that we need to work on before we can work on other things. And basically what this person was saying was that, like, we need to work on racial issues before we start working on transgender issues, before we start working on these other types, LGBTQ type issues, because what he was saying was basically like when you look at someone, the first thing you see is the skin, the color of their skin before they say anything, before they talk to you, before anything that they do. You're going to make judgments about them based on their appearance. And the color of your skin is a very like prominent appearance, and it's something that we have been using to make judgments on. It's been something that we have been people have been oppressed by, and before we fix those issues, we can't skip over those and start working on other things first. We need to fix it one thing at a time. We need to go in the order that they appear. We need to fix these issues with racial things before we can start fixing other things. Now we can work on them all together at the same time, but I think the person I was talking to had this feeling like, why are your issues more valid, more important than mine? How come? And this was a gay black person, and he was saying like, I'm a black person before I'm a gay person. And it's because of the history, it's because of what people see on me first. And what he was saying was like, we need to fix these issues for the black community before I'm going to start worrying about issues for the gay community, because we are still so far away on racial issues that it makes transgender, LGBTQ, gay issues not seem as important right now.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because, I mean, race is still like a huge problem that we face. However, I feel like oftentimes, like, people of different races might still have more opportunities than people who may not be straight. So something that I brought up during that was transgender people, in some states it's still legal for them to get fired for being transgender, but it's like you're not allowed to get fired for like being African American or Asian. Like you can't get fired for that.
Mm-hmm.
So although race is still an issue that we face, I feel like there's still more like discrimination towards people in the LGBTQIA+ community, because there aren't as many laws in place as there are with racism.
You get fired for being gay then?
Sure, in some
That I don't
states.
know. I'm sure in some states you could. I don't know. That you have to check with the laws of each state. But I
But
know
you can
that
get
some
fired
states,
for being transgender.
in some states you can get fired and there aren't laws in place for it. So I thought that was interesting that he brought that up.
I didn't even know you could get fired for that.
Like, I see both arguments. Like, I really do see what he's saying. Because, like, you can't really pick the color of your skin, but you might argue that you can kind of hide if you feel the need, you can kind of hide that side of you, like your sexual orientation or if you're transgender. But then again, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that problem came first because people still struggled with those issues, like being transgender at the same time that racism was a problem. It just wasn't as widely spoken because people didn't understand it and were afraid of it, so those people who were struggling with it had to do it a lot more privately too.
Yeah, it was privately, but it was like those people were still living their lives. Even if they may not have been living their authentic lives, they were still living their lives, still given opportunities when other people were not, when other people could not hide that, could not be their authentic self because they didn't have that option at all to
Right.
hide anything.
Right. I agree with that.
Is there anything else you want to add? Videos, not videos.
I think it's a good thing to hide that though.
No, I know, I see what you're saying.
Like, I think
That's what I'm saying. I see both sides of it real well. 'Cause,
I mean,
like,
there
one,
should be
you
equality
can't
for
hide.
everything.
You shouldn't have to live a fake life. I feel like everyone should be able to live an authentic life, which is the
issue.
The issue. It's both groups don't get to live an authentic life, really.
Yeah.
Whether one's more important than the other.
No, why?
That was all, folks. I'll do it for you.
Yeah.